The best is yet to come, and babe, won't it be fine?
You think you've seen the sun, but you ain't seen it shine.
Hello everyone, welcome once again to Ask the Treksperts, the show where we answer your questions about Star Trek. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Sarah.
Sarah, today we're going to talk about Star Trek the Motion Picture, which was requested by Wood02230223.
Wow. If he had some more ones and zeros, he could be a Binar.
And he specifically wanted us to talk about the pacing of motion picture. He asked us if we found motion picture to be really slow, like a lot of people do, and you know, talk about the pacing. Of course, we'll pretty much just review the film and talk about motion picture on the whole. And what he said about his viewing experience is that he or she, I don't know who this person is. I'm sorry, I shouldn't make that assumption. But this person says that they watched motion picture several times and could never get past the first hour. That you know this person was able to get through the whole thing one time, and ever since then falls asleep after the first hour.
Well, you know, the first 6 are hard. It's the last 2 that are actually really smooth sailing.
Yeah. I mean, you know, 8-hour film, if they just cut out the last 2 hours, it wouldn't be quite as bad. It'd still be long, but it wouldn't be. I'm kidding. You know, motion picture always cracked me up. I always tell this joke when we talk about motion picture. It always cracked me up that back when it was on VHS. The VHS copies, all on the top of the box, said special longer version. The theatrical version was never available. There was always this special longer version. I don't know how much longer. I think like a couple minutes. You know what I mean? But I mean, I can't think of any other movie that I've ever seen specifically the word special longer version. And nothing is more ripe for jokes than that.
Exactly. You know, now I think they would have sold more copies actually if they had advertised it as special shorter version. You know?
Yeah,
where
probably.
They had taken out some of the more time-encompassing special effects.
Motion picture has been dogged on for years and years as being one of the most slowest molasses films in the history of film, really. And I don't think it necessarily completely deserves that title.
No, I don't think so.
But it's gotten that, and you know, people have referred to it as the slow motion picture and things like that. Go ahead, Sarah. It had been a while since we watched it. We just sat down and watched it again, and I feel like I have an entirely different reaction to it every time I watch it.
Actually,
so,
and me too.
What was your first reaction?
Well, actually, the last time I had watched it, I was still a relatively new Trekkie. That was about 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, imagine that.
Has it been that long?
It has. So back then, I had, you know, by that point, I had seen Star Trek a bit, but I've seen a lot more since then. And so I actually had more of an appreciation on this viewing because I had seen a lot more of the original series since my last viewing. And so I had more of an idea of where the show was coming from. You know, TNG is what I had seen a lot of before the last time I saw it. And so I was coming at it from, oh, well, I like Next Generation. This movie is not Next Generation.
Right.
It's kind of weird. I'm not sure what to think of it. And so this time I was like, hey, I can see the connection between they had 3 years of the original series, they didn't have Star Trek for a while, and now suddenly there's this big epic on screen, and they're trying to do justice to the original series with a big budget.
And I will give it is an epic. It is, I mean, I will give it that. For better or worse, it's at least, and whether the concept itself deserves that treatment is up for debate, but it's certainly shot like an epic. It's directed by Robert Wise, who directed The Day the Earth Stood Still. And the smartest thing they did was hire a veteran science fiction director.
And what I really appreciated about that film was that it was steeped in science fiction.
Oh yeah,
its
totally
roots were completely in the science fiction genre. I mean, a little bit later, it goes a little bit more in a sci-fi action
into an action thing
direction.
And even Wrath of Khan, it's inching that way, but it's still cemented in science fiction ideas.
But I think motion picture is the closest it gets to pure science fiction film.
I would agree with that. It's certainly related a lot to, it's compared a lot, to 2001.
I can see that.
Which it's most reminiscent of.
Sure, especially the slow pacing of.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tried to watch 2001 and I couldn't get past the monkeys at the beginning.
So let's talk about this. Let's get the pacing out of the way,
Okay.
and then talk about some other stuff.
Yeah.
Why does it get the rap it gets for being paced so extremely slow?
Well, I think part of the problem is just it takes its time, especially when nothing's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I know you comment on this every time we watch it, where you get a Starfield screensaver at the beginning of the film with nothing, no credits even.
Right.
And then, a few minutes into the film, you get the 10-minute shot of the Enterprise, and nothing's going on except we're looking at it. I mean, it's just scenes like that where you just have all these, the camera steps back and pans something for a while kind of shot.
It's all atmosphere and no substance
Exactly.
at that point. And that's the critical way to look at it. I mean, critically, that totally is what's happening. What we, of course, have to try to do, if we can, this doesn't make it a better film, but it makes it, but it gives us a greater appreciation for the film, is we have to have some historical perspective and look at the fact that we hadn't had Star Trek in 13 years when this movie came out. And it was enough for the people who knew Star Trek that Star Trek was on the big screen. They were soaking in the atmosphere. We finally got to see the ship on screen, and when we saw it, they made a different ship. They used the budget they had, and it was absolutely an inspirational thing to see.
Well, if you think about the differences between what the ship looked like in the original series and the effects from the 60s, and compare it to 1979, what that ship looked like, it looked realistic.
That's right.
I mean, you could take it seriously.
And for the most part, it looks real now.
Yeah,
the
looks
effects
great.
in this film hold up amazingly well.
Yeah.
And honestly, gives me an appreciation for model work, and makes me wish that we did model work more often.
Yeah.
That's not to say that CG can't be made to look extremely real, but it is to say that sometimes people are kind of lazy with CG.
Yeah.
I will say that the motion picture looks more realistic than the majority of the special effects in Enterprise. I don't know if that's fair, especially because Enterprise is a TV show and they're on a time constraint and they're on budget and whatever. But all I'm saying is time does not necessarily mean that things can't look good, and also good is relative. The effects in some places may not be realistic, but they look really interesting and they look really fun.
Yeah, I really liked the point in the film when they went through that wormhole, when the engines were out of balance and created that wormhole.
It's different.
It's really cool.
It's different than how we do it now.
Yeah.
It's a different effect.
Yeah, but I really can't think of anything that's like it.
That's right.
Really.
It is a unique film. When we get to, again, I had a very different experience this time. When we get to the scene where we're just looking at the Enterprise in space dock, and I'm not going to say that scene isn't without a point.
Yes.
The point is, Kirk finally gets to go to the Enterprise again, and he's basking in the awe of it, and so are we.
Right.
That's the point of it. When you've seen another 700 episodes of Star Trek, I'm not sure that works, but regardless, at the time it did, and so we're looking at the ship at the same time as Kirk is, and taking this all in, and I had such a different experience with it this time because this is a wonderful soundtrack. If nothing else, it's like one of the greatest movie soundtracks ever. And I'm not trying to do that thing where you talk about how great the music is and then you bash everything else in the film. In scenes like that one, and it's not the only one, and you and I talked about this when we were watching it, and I never thought of this before. I feel like I'm attending a concert. I feel like I'm attending an orchestral concert, and the actual substance is the music. And what we're seeing with the Enterprise is just something to look at while we listen to this wonderful music.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing is that if you look at it that way, if you watch that scene, the 10 minutes that way, it actually seems a lot shorter.
It does.
And it's interesting.
I started really paying attention to the score. And it's a score I've listened to on my own without watching the film.
Yeah.
But with... this is maybe going too far, but it was a little like Fantasia. It was like you're listening to a score while you're watching deliberately prepared scenes to go with the music.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe if you've never thought of it that way, you'll enjoy that, at least that part of the film a little bit better.
Yeah.
You know, you're talking, like you said, it's got that 3 minutes before me. You're talking about a movie that has a, what do you call it?
Like an overture.
An overture. It's
Yeah.
got an overture at the beginning of the film. What has overtures? Concerts.
Yeah. Well, concerts and musicals have those sometimes.
But things where you're supposed to be paying attention to the music.
Epics. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, let's get off pacing for a minute.
Okay,
Let's just talk a little bit about the film.
Yeah, sure. I thought it was a lot of fun to see what all the characters had done in the interim, or at least some of them, the big main ones. You got to see what Spock was doing, of course. He was going through Kolinar, and of course didn't complete it because he was called off into space by V'ger.
I thought at least conceptually they did a good job of not making that stuff boring.
Yeah, I thought so too, and it was really cool to see what Vulcan looked like. I mean,
Vulcan looks amazing.
yeah, you and I talked about this a little bit, but I think Enterprise pulled a lot from that scene when they put together the Vulcan stuff. No, it's not. But
it looks great.
The statues were great.
If you didn't feel bad about Vulcan getting blown up in Star Trek XI, go back and watch this film, and you might feel worse about it.
Yeah. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, they just have such a rich culture there, and it looks great.
What really hurts the film, because we're talking a lot about visuals, and that's what it has going for it. Honestly, I think that you could fast forward past the talking scenes and appreciate the film as much as anyone. And I know that's awful, but and that's not to say that there isn't some little bits of good character stuff. But ultimately, the characters don't drive this film.
Right.
And Star Trek is generally character driven, and this film just isn't.
Right. It's very plot driven, and you get some character stuff, and they try to throw some of that in there, especially with Spock, where he goes off and he's so cold at the beginning, and then he encounters V'ger, and he learns from the experience, and he learns that he has to appreciate his humanity. He's
honestly the character who gets an arc.
Yeah.
I think Kirk maybe gets a bit of a subtle arc, but it's a lot more about Spock. But then it also is just a lot about an idea, as far as V'ger and learning what it is, and it is a really good reveal if you don't know what it is. When you get to the end and you find out what V'ger actually is, it's a good reveal. But it really is kind of all about the reveal. In some ways, it's a little bit Twilight Zone in that way.
Although I would not go as far to say that once you know what the ending is, that you can't appreciate the film on a second viewing.
No, well, it has a majesty to it.
Yeah, I really like the process that they go through of, we may know what it is, but the characters don't. And so in a way, for me, it's fresh every time.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because, first it's a cloud. What is it? You go inside. Oh, it's this giant ship thing. Are there people on it who are like the aliens driving the ship? No, it's just a machine. What kind of machine? You go to it, and it's Voyager.
I do feel like the majesty of the film comes much more from the ambiance than it does from the fact that it's Star Trek. Again, it would have been more so the fact that it was Star Trek when you saw it in 1979, just because we get to see all these people on screen again. But that doesn't carry the film, and the ambiance does. So, I guess what I'm getting at is, and here's my question: is this concept worthy of the grandness that we get of the film? Consider, of course, that the idea for the film is based on a pilot script for a second Star Trek series that never happened, called Star Trek Phase 2. And when they scrapped the idea of the series and decided that they'd be better off doing a film, they took that idea and basically took a pilot and turned it into a movie. And that's the reason you have new characters.
Yeah.
That's the reason that Decker and Ilia are here. And those characters were supposed to be mainstays in the series. And of course they go away at the end of the movie.
Sure. Missing in action.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a pilot. It's a pilot, and it has this huge budget, it has this grandness.
Right, it's a pilot, but that's how it was originally intended.
Right.
And I think the question is...
So is it worth it?
Well, I would say that the concept for the piece is very much worth it. I think you could take that concept of, well, the concept's been done in other places,
Sure.
and it's been done in other ways, and...
Well, that's what helps it. It's classic
exactly.
science fiction.
It's a classic science fiction concept.
Right.
You know, machine versus humanity. You know, logic versus
and
emotion.
And most importantly, machine we built
exactly.
versus humanity.
Yeah, and the question really is execution. Did they have enough plot to drive, to fill, 2.5 hours?
Yeah.
And
I think that's
just, did it work?
For me, was there enough plot to drive the film is a resounding no.
Right, and I would agree with that, because you're sitting there for 10 minutes at a time in various places, you know, or 2 minutes at a time, waiting for them to fill time, it feels.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like they were really relying on special effects to get you through the moments where nothing's happening. And...
yeah, that's absolutely right.
although I think that if they had cut those down, you know, and made it just... maybe it isn't a 2.5 hour film. Maybe if they just made it an hour and a half or hour 45 or maybe even 2 hours, it would have felt more like a cohesive piece, and we would have appreciated it more.
Maybe. I think you would have had to rework the talking scenes.
Sure.
Because honestly, yeah, it's paced really slowly, and I'm not even sure I would go as far as to say that it has a consistent pace. But if you cut it down too much, you'd also be cutting out some of what makes, you know, the film work in the way that it works. You know what I mean?
Well, it wouldn't feel so much like an epic.
You'd lose a lot of those really beautiful scenes. I think you'd have to lose them in favor of more talking, which honestly isn't what the point of the film is.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it ought to be, being a Star Trek fan. You know what I mean? Our characters just aren't driving this piece. Everybody's performances are decent.
I would agree.
You know, I think there's some slightly hokey things done. I don't love McCoy at the beginning. I think McCoy showing up with a beard, looking like a hippie, is a little much.
Yeah. The first time I saw that, when I was very new to Star Trek, I didn't even know who that was until he shaved his beard off.
Yeah, Star Trek is timeless. We don't need to call attention to the fact that it's 1979.
Yeah.
That was my problem with it. After that, he's fine.
Yeah.
But the only person for me whose performance really stands out is Leonard Nimoy's.
Yes.
And because he comes on, and I said this to you because it's been so long since I'd seen it. I felt kind of weird about it because I was like, I don't remember what exactly is happening with Spock, because when Spock comes on the ship, he's talking in a lower register, and he's he's
cold.
Yeah, and that all makes sense. We understand why he's cold, but I was just like, why is he talking so differently?
Yeah.
And I for a minute, I really thought maybe Leonard Nimoy had just forgotten how to play Spock, and then you get to that moment for change for Spock, and all of a sudden he's Spock again. He's just Spock again.
Yeah.
And he comes back in a normal register, and he's got the same energy he always used to have.
Yeah.
And he's back to half human Spock.
Yes.
Whereas before he's full Vulcan, totally cold.
Yeah.
And I like how you described it. You said he's nearly an Enterprise Vulcan.
Yeah.
When he gets through with his Kolinahr, where he comes on and he won't even talk to anyone. Yeah, he's like, "Hi Spock, we haven't seen you in 13 years. It's really good to see you." And Spock's just kind of like,
logic equals rude.
That's what I said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Visually, as far as the space special effects go, it's really great. It's really great. It's wonderful to look at. But I don't like the color scheme of the ship. I just don't like it. I don't like what the bridge looks like. The bridge, what it looks like, it's fine, but I don't like the
lack of color.
Like the lack of color, and you can't have that gray of a bridge and then also have gray uniforms. It just looks bad. Yeah. That film would have looked better in those places in black and white.
I don't know if they were trying to go more realistic or what, but it just didn't work. You need the color. Maybe not to the extent that the original series show had, but even when you get to Next Gen and they're wearing the red uniforms or the gold, or
it really offsets the blandness of the bridge.
Exactly, and you need something like that.
Yeah, I mean, lost my train of thought for a second. Oh, what are the things on their belts? Because they have those goofy things on their belts, and we're told over and over again in various reading material about this movie, in various literature, what they're for. It's never mentioned anywhere in the film what they're for. They don't use it for anything. They're supposed to be like life sign readers. wars. Do you know this? Where
No, I
where
didn't know that.
like they keep they're supposed to keep track of their like life sign readings, and you can check your own like heart rate and
Really?
and all these things. And I'm like, I don't know why you don't just carry around a tricorder, but whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway. They're supposed to have various uses, and I'm like, why don't they use them for something in the film if they're actually supposed to be functional devices?
Yeah.
And it seems to me like even in 1979, I don't know why you wouldn't just scrap tricorders altogether and use those as tricorders and communication devices. And
Right here.
it's silly. No, you can pull it off. Is what I'm thinking. It's something
Okay.
you can just pop up. Kind of like a communicator pin.
Yeah, but that's funny.
Except that it goes on your belt.
Yeah.
Except you're not wearing a belt.
That's really weird.
Okay. It's a really bad idea, and they shouldn't have done it.
I agree. But they didn't mention it in the movie, so
They're just
They're
wearing
just
these silly
belts.
things. Yeah.
I always figured that was just a focal point.
They're not
for their
even
uniform.
belts, though. They're just these oval things that stick on them like communicator
I just
deck.
figured that was part of their uniform, as far as because otherwise you'd just be wearing these gray jumpsuits that look bland and boring.
Mm-hmm.
So
So yeah, what do you say to people who have never seen this film? Obviously, we gave away the ending, so I hope people have watched the film.
Well, that's for everybody who's tried to watch it and has fallen asleep.
Absolutely,
countless times.
yeah. I mean, when we talk about stuff on the show, when we're reviewing episodes and stuff, we try to assume people have seen them.
Yeah.
But anyway, what would you say to people who haven't seen this film and think it's too slow to get through and that kind of thing? I mean, how do you change their perceptions? Because I think it's worth watching once.
I think for a person to appreciate this film, they need to appreciate it based on historical perspective in some way. Because I don't think you can watch this film out of time and understand why it is this way.
No, I think you definitely need some kind of background.
I think you need some background, and I think you need to know what kind of movie you're getting yourself into before you're watching
You gotta
it.
be prepared
as
for
far
it.
as this is a science fiction epic piece. It's not trying to be First Contact.
Yeah.
It's not trying to be an action film. It's not trying to get you engaged into the characters, and I don't know.
Yeah, I'd say why. Well, I think in some ways it is trying to get you engaged in the characters, and it's actually failing at that. But
I think it knows that its audience is already engaged in the characters, and so it's
That's a
putting
really
those
good
same
point.
characters on screen the same way we appreciate them, and not giving them very much time because we know who they
because
are.
we know who they are. We've watched 79 episodes about these people.
Exactly.
We don't need to give them that background. I would say two things. I'd say watch some classic science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say watch some pieces that are trying this, that are doing it better.
Yes.
Watch 2001 and watch The Day the Earth Stood Still. It's a different movie. It's not the same thing, but it's Robert Wise.
Mm-hmm.
And I would also say watch it on the most enormous screen possible. Well, no, really. Watch it on the biggest screen you can watch it on.
Make it an experience.
Make it an experience.
Because that's what it's meant to be.
Rating.
Rating. Oh, how do you rate this movie?
How do you rate this movie? I would say probably. I would say probably try to rate it like compared to other Star Trek films.
Compared to other Star Trek.
Kind of like SF Debris does. Try to rate it based on what it appears in.
Okay.
I like how he does that.
Okay. Compared to other Star Trek films, this is certainly in the top half for me. I like it because it is straight up science fiction. I prefer my Star Trek to be science fiction based. I can appreciate the more action based stuff, but it's not.
So that's a big check mark in the good box.
Exactly. And I really appreciated it more this viewing than I have in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But I can also say that it's no Wrath of Khan.
It's just not the most entertaining
Yes.
of them.
Yeah.
It's almost easier to appreciate it in a historical sense than it is in like I'm just going to sit back and eat some popcorn and watch a good movie kind of sense.
Yeah. I think I would give
Or
it
even have an intellectual experience.
a 3 out of 4.
A 3 out of 4.
3 out of 4.
I'm going to lowball it a little bit and go for 2.5.
Okay.
Just for the lack of entertainment value and just for the fact that Wrath of Khan is so much better. Again, I'm comparing it to the others where Wrath of Khan in a lot of ways is what the first Star Trek film should have been. If that makes sense. Like what I mean is right out the gate, let's not just try to make the fans happy. Let's also get new people interested in Star Trek.
Sure.
That's where this film fails for me.
I can see that.
Is I'm not sure I could hand even back
But
then.
on
I'm
the
not sure I
other
could
hand-
hand this to somebody that's never watched Star Trek.
On
and
the other hand,
expect them
I
to
don't
appreciate
like
it.
so much the more modern half of Star Trek films where they try to gear their movies solely for new watchers.
No, I agree with that.
And I kind of wish they would appreciate.
But the best of the TOS films didn't do that. The best of the TOS, Wrath of Khan, Voyage Home.
But they didn't forget their fan base.
No, they didn't. But that's what I'm saying. They were able to do both.
Yeah, and I kind of wish more Star Trek films could have been true to the series while at the same time being accessible to the modern audience.
Yeah, and I suppose I'm comparing this mostly to TOS films because I think the TOS films are much better than the next gen films. But I'm saying Wrath of Khan is a better movie. Yes, Search for Spock is a tick better than this. Mm-hmm. I'd say Voyage Home is better than this, and I'd say 6 is a little better than this.
You and I disagree on 6, but that's a taste issue.
6 has a really great plot.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, hey, thanks a lot for watching Ask the Treksperts, and
don't ax us.
Hey, leave us a comment. Tell us what you think about motion picture, and also leave us a comment if there's something else you'd like us to talk about in a future video, or something you'd like us to review. And thanks a lot for watching. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Sarah.
See you next time.
The best is yet to come.